I'm Kofi Bartels. You're welcome. Tonight we're tackling the new policy announcement that has been shaking up the political conversations in Nigeria. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu's executive order drastically reducing the size of the entourage for local and foreign trips for government officials. According to the new policy, the president has directed that local security agencies should be used for his protection whenever he travels to any state in the country, instead of traveling with a number of security details from Abuja, where the seat of government is. Well, the president has approved also a new limit of 25 members of staff to accompany him on domestic trips within the country. The office of the First Lady is now limited to 10 members of staff to accompany her on official trips within the country. The vice president will be limited to 15 members of staff on official trips within the country, while the vice president's wife will be limited to 10 members of staff within the country. This decision is coming about 5 weeks after Nigerians criticized the Tinubu administration for its participation in the UN Annual Climate Summit COP28 in Dubai, the UAE, United Arab Emirates, where there was a report that Nigeria had signed up to take 1,114 delegates. Although the presidency said it sponsored only 422 delegates, reports had it at the time that Nigeria spent about 2.78 billion naira on airfares and ESTA codes alone. We're not talking about hotel bills. So, with budget slashed, with delegations now trimmed, and the new emphasis on delivering results at home, the Jagaban, Nigeria's president as he's known by affectionately, it throws a gauntlet. But is this a genuine commitment to austerity and efficiency in governance, or something more? We want to unpack the motives and the potential consequences of this very unexpected directive from Nigeria's presidency. Tonight we're joined by Lanre Suraj. He's a chairman, Human and Environmental Development Agenda. He joins us from the United Kingdom, or rather from Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And Dayo Akintobi, public affairs analyst, who joins us from Lagos. I'm told that we have lost Larry. He will join us again once we have him back. We'll put him on. But I want to welcome, to start with, Dayo Akintobi. Dayo, it's good to have you on the program tonight, and thank you so very kindly for your time.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to be here.
We need to lean back a bit into your seat so we can see you fully. But in your opinion, was rampant, or was the size of the delegation of the president's entourage, was the size of the entourage rather, on foreign and domestic trips really, as far as you're concerned, when you look at the government spending, was it a major drain on the national treasury, something that had to be done? Or would you join those who are saying this is just about the optics?
Well, I think it's a step in the right direction, but I'm a bit underwhelmed by the proportion. If you look at it proportionately, the cuts he has implemented or recommended are an infinitesimal proportion of the overall cost of governance. What I would have loved to hear or see, for example, was for him to say he's cutting out all foreign trips completely and doing everything by Zoom, as I am doing now. There's no real major justification in this age of technology for any president to have to go anywhere for any reason outside the country for any kind of talks or encouraging investors to come to the country. It's just an unnecessary drain on resources. Secondly, I also think that there are so many components that are sucking our national resource, our national revenue base. So that this is just one very minor portion of it all. If we're talking about travel, how about salaries? Okay, he's reduced the number of aides that will travel with him to 25. That probably means in the past, he probably had 100 that traveled with him. So the question is, how many does he actually have? If 100 used to travel with him, probably he's got another 300 to 400 who is staying behind in Abuja when he's gone on a trip. Each and every one of those collects a salary, collects an allowance, has an assistant, has all kinds of benefits, clothing allowance, all kinds of stuff. So if we are serious about trimming the size of government and cutting government expenditure, this is just too little. It's just one component. Travel, I don't think drains as much as the emoluments, the allowances, the benefits of the entire structure of the three arms of government. So I would think a more holistic approach is required that looks at all the elements of expenditure, not just one component, which is travel. I think that is too little. I mean, look, for example, we're talking about the First Lady's office, the Vice President's wife, that are not constitutionally recognized. Why should
are you saying that this Dario, interesting? Are you saying this cost-cutting measure won't have a serious impact in terms of the percentage of reduction in government spending? You know, when you look at the overall spending of government, is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying when you look at the overall spending of government, there are deeper cuts than can be made, and the element or the percentage or the proportion that will be cut from this reduction in the number of aides that accompany the president is an infinitesimal proportion of the whole. So it won't make but a tiny little blip. And meanwhile, we have a revenue problem, which we are hamstrung to improve on our revenue. So the only thing we can do is the other side of the equation, which is the expenditure. We have the wherewithal to work on cutting the expenditure because we have a knife that we can use to pare this down.
But isn't this a good start? Isn't this a good start? Because you look at, in my introduction, we talked about the size of the delegation that was registered by Nigeria for COP28, 1,114. Later, the government came out to say they were going to 422 officially from government, not from the private sector. Some would say that you just spend 2.78 billion naira on airfares and extra costs, not even talking about feeding or hotel accommodation expenses. That was a huge and very sizable, expenditure by the government, and this is a very good start.
Kofi, I don't think you can assume that from the president's statement today, it means that when an event like COP28 comes along, we won't still have 400 or 500 delegates. He said his own travel. So if he's going to COP28, he may take 25 people as his own personal assistants. That doesn't mean that another 300 or 400 others from other ministries, departments, and agencies and others won't still go on the government dole. I think the 25 he's talking about are personal attendants who will see to his administrative needs, his domestic needs, his legal needs, direct involvement with him. That doesn't mean that others that are going to represent the government or to do other negotiations for the larger government will be cut out. So let's parse his statement very carefully and let us not begin to assume that it means a deeper cut than what it really is. I think he's just limiting his own personal direct aides, those who work with him directly, to 25 as opposed to perhaps 100 or however many it was before. So I think it's too little. It's very late coming, but I said at the beginning of this discussion that it's a step in the right direction. But I think we should encourage the president and the administration to go much, much further.
Dayo, I want to take you up on that because you're saying, yes, Dayo, I want to take you up on that because you're saying that this is not significant. That's what you're insinuating, that we're having, just the size of the government, the president's entourage. So let's say he wants to go with all his ministers, then they all will also be. But if you look at this, excuse me, he's saying that on international trips, let's start from there, which is where more money is spent. The president has directed that no more than 20 individuals will be allowed to travel with him. So does this mean that if he's going to COP29, he won't go with more than 20 people with him, including the ministers, heads of departments and agencies, and all that? Or does this mean that if he wants to go with as many ministers as he wants, but his own personal, what do you call it again? His own personal team of aides, of assistants, maybe even the chef, maybe his aide-de-camp, maybe another DSS, that is what his immediate team. Is that what we're looking at? Or we're looking at the entire number of people who are to travel with him? What do you think?
That's my interpretation, really. English language is a very precise language. You can do a lot of things with it to obfuscate or to more or less play around with your intent. But my interpretation of the statement is that the 25 people that will travel with him are limited to his direct aides, which does not necessarily mean that other members of government will not go to the same event, but not as the president's entourage. I think that if there's a COP29, ministers from other ministries, heads of parastatals will go on their own ticket as part of government delegation, but not as direct aides of the president. So I don't foresee, from what the president has said today, that there will be any reduction in the number of people that are.
Yes, but we have, we have, you know, special advisors who are part of his. I would like to believe they're part of his staff. If you're looking at members of staff, let's leave the ministers are out, let's leave the heads of parastatals and maybe heads of ministries, departments, and agencies. But you have a lot of aides, special advisor on this, senior special assistant on that, and all that. People who are under the presidency. I don't know if the national security advisor is most. So I don't know if that is, okay, we're talking about personal staff. We're talking about including special advisors and special assistants. You said English is a precise language, but we need to understand this. We'll go for a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. And for those of you at home, please stay with us, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. It's still Politics HQ, Radio News Central TV, looking at the cost-cutting measures recently announced by Nigeria's federal government regarding the size of the entourage for the federal government's delegation to, you know, for local and foreign trips. For the local trips, the president's spokesperson, Nigerian Galilei, announced that the president approved a new limit of 25 members of staff to accompany him on domestic trips within the country. That's domestic trips, okay? The Office of the First Lady has 10 members of staff to accompany her on official trips within the country. The Vice President will be limited to 15 members of staff on official trips within the country, while his wife will be limited to 10 members of staff as well for official trips within the country. Of course, we have a limit of 20 members of staff for the President going all the way to trips outside the country, as compared to other, in the past when we had 50 plus members of staff accompanying the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for trips outside the country. So 20 individuals will be allowed to travel with him. That number will be cut down to 5 in the case of the First Lady. We also have the entourage of the Vice President also cut down to 5 as well. The wife of the President, the Vice President, will also be given 5 members of staff to accompany her on the foreign trips. We have our guest tonight, and we had earlier Dayo, of course, Dayo Akintobi, public affairs analyst, joining us via video link from Lagos, Nigeria. Also, Larry Suraj, Chairman, Human and Environmental Development Agenda. He was earlier with us from Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and once he's back, we'll put him on the air. So, Larry, Dayo, sorry, I hope you don't mind. I really want us to understand what's going on here, because you see, some of these things can be shrouded in a lot of, jargon or a lot of words, that may just end up hoodwinking Nigerians. That's why I want us to really understand. You know, they started, Dayo, by saying a 60% reduction. And Nigerians were asking, well, 6%, okay, what is 60%? And we didn't know what exactly, 60% of what? And our jury now announced, to address the press, that for the president, you have a limit of 25 members of staff for local trips and 20 members of staff for foreign trips. So, please, just answer the question I asked before we went to the break, Dayo. What are these people talking about? Are they talking about chefs, cooks, cleaners, butlers, or are they talking about people including special advisors, special assistants, and all that?
Well, Kofi, it's likely to be a mix. I don't think it's all domestic and personal assistants. I think there's probably some administrative people involved in the 25 as well. But to me, the overwhelming, I think we're getting too caught up in looking at the numbers, and we're saying 20 here and 5 here and 15 here, and it looks like it's meaningful. What I'm telling you is, if you look at the sum total of government expenditure, I love the question you asked earlier, 60% of what? So it's cutting 60% of the personnel who used to travel with him. But let us try to analyze this a bit more, a bit deeper. The government functionaries who go along with the president on a trip, even though they are probably a part of his entourage and they're on the same plane and they're on the same convoy, I don't expect that ministers, for example, heads of MDAs, probably private businessmen, corporate titans, elder statesmen, some traditional rulers who follow him, I don't see how they will be a part of the 20 or 25. So even if he has his personal assistant and perhaps his chief of staff and perhaps his chief security officer and maybe his head of domestic affairs, although they straddle two roles, both within his administration and within his personal fiefdom, they will not count as part of the larger entourage. So I think 25 is limited to direct involvement with him. But others who are going to go have bilateral talks, negotiations, marketing for foreign direct investment, even if they are in the same plane with him, they are going on their own ticket, on their own assignment, and not as part of his convoy. So that's why I'm saying this 60% might look like it is significant, but I think it's just a play on numbers, because when you say, okay, so only 20 people will go instead of 50, if you look at it and you say government recurrent expenditure, the money they spend for running costs for trips, if it is 200 billion and you have saved 1 billion, what is the real proportion? How significant is
I'll
1
come back to the
billion
proportions. Yes, yeah, I'll come back to the proportions, because very important point you've raised. Just to point out, for the president, we're talking about a maximum of 25 members of his staff to accompany him on trips within the country. And then for foreign trips, you're looking at 20 for the president. And for the first lady, 10 for foreign local trips, 5 for foreign trips. Vice president, 15 for local trips, 10 for foreign trips. His vice president's wife, 10 for local trips, 15 for foreign trips. But, you know, I look at things like this that this administration has put out, and, you know, you cannot help but wonder whether this is just something as, you know, it looks like, you know, the more you look, the less you see, you know, and these are things that I would expect of people who want to, you know, want to scam me. But this is government, so we can't say that. Because when you say 25 members of staff, what exactly do you mean? You know, what are the details? It reminds me of people who try to swindle me in the past, call me on the phone and tell me, you know, very vague things. Okay, you're talking about official domestic trips. What are official domestic trips in Nigeria? For instance, what do you think the government, federal government, means by official domestic? Because everything that anybody in government does is official. Okay, if the First Lady Bola Ahmed Tinubu, senator, is distinguished senator, is traveling from Abuja to Lagos to visit, maybe attend someone's birthday of an official, is that an official trip, for instance?
Well, that's the beauty of being in government, is that you have the leeway to parse language to interpret language to suit your own purposes. Look, for example, when President Tinubu came to Lagos over the Yuletide, when he spent a week in Lagos on holiday, would we consider that to be an official trip? And if so, is he entitled to the 25 aids that would follow him? See, Kofi, part of the big problem we have in this situation is that this government has largely been compelled to reward political functionaries that played a major role in their coming into office. And that is what is burdening the system. If you look even at the cabinet, if you look at the MDAs, if you look at all of the apparatus of government. What you see is political patronage that's rewarding political support. And so people have to be compensated in a certain way for the role they played in getting us into office. As a result, we can't make everybody a minister. We can't make everybody a DG. So ultimately, some people will be on the periphery of government that will get the spoils some kind of way. Things like ESTA code from trips, things like contracts for their individual companies. So this is part of the problem. And I think President Tinubu is burdened with that issue in terms of the fact that there is a whole swarm of political operatives who are pressuring him into delivering individual dividends of democracy to them. So, but I think he has the will to try to reduce the cost of governance. President Tinubu is proving to be a listening president. Remember the outcry that came after COP28, that how could 1,000 and something people have gone on in Nigeria's name? And then they clarified it, and government said they paid for 400 and something people, and there was still a lot of chagrin about that. So he's looked at that. He seems to be able to gauge the mood and the temper of the polity, which is really a good leadership trait, actually. So he's seen the restiveness in public, that they're not happy. There was a scandal about the 260 million Jeeps that the legislators bought for themselves. There's issue of palliatives. There's issue of sharing rice at Christmas to certain privileged people. So I think this move is a response to public outcry about expenditure.
Okay, you've said it all that, you know. Yeah, you've said it all that this is a response. Yeah, we'll talk about the timing of all of this, because COP28 ended since last year. But
yes,
you know, I'm still going to go back to the fact that there's so much about this that's not clear, you know, and I don't know how government will come out with policies that are not clear. What do you mean by, okay, government is large. You have the presidency, you have the ministries, departments, and agencies of the federal government. We're not looking at the other arms of government, too. We're not looking at the other levels of government. It's federal government. Okay. Other agencies have their own budgets. Departments have their budgets. Ministries have their budgets. All these are tied to the federal government's budget. For instance, those who have been preoccupied with Betta Edu for the past few days, some are alleging that she, when she was still Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, approved funds for flight ticket and airport taxis for the ministry staff to Kogi State, a state with no airport. Now, I don't know the truth of that, because there's a lot of PR and, you know, all that flying around. But the point I'm trying to make is this, that ministers, heads of parastatals and stuff and co can also approve, say, okay, you want to travel here. They're not mentioned in this. I didn't see anything. Maybe if I'm wrong, please correct me. I didn't see anything about ministries, departments, and agencies outside the presidency, what is expected of them. So am I missing it here? And do you think that should have also been addressed as well?
Well, that's why I said they're probably trying to be clever by half. They have to start from somewhere, and they started from the presidency, which is the one with the largest entourage. But it would have been nice to also say there's an across-the-board cut. The entire federal government, there's an across-the-board cut of 60% of all travel expenses. Like you alluded to, we saw a document purportedly signed by Betta Edu when she was the Minister for Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, purportedly signed by her, in which she approved travel for maybe 12, 13 people from her ministry, including a driver, going to Kogi State that has no airport. Now, in my conspiratorial mind, or in my inquisitive mind, I tell myself that, well, Kogi has no airport. Maybe they were going to fly to Ibadan and drive to Lokoja from there, or fly to Abuja or wherever the nearest airport is and drive from there. So I'm not particularly disturbed by the fact that they were flying to a state that doesn't have an airport. But what concerns me is if a ministry for one trip can sign for 12 people to take ESTA code, to take flight allowance, to take hotel accommodation, feeding, and all that, one ministry, and we have 40-something, 50-something, 56 ministries. and you look at the cost of one trip for one ministry, in a year, they will probably do 100+ trips, times it times 57 ministries, times it by how many MDAs we have. And this is a crushing weight on the pockets of the federal government. So I would have liked to hear across the board cut. First of all, cancellation of all foreign trips that are not absolutely essential. Cancellation of all foreign trips. Domestic trips, 60%. Why even 60%? 60% is arbitrary. You've been focusing on 25 staff, 5 for the, why 25? Why not 18 or 14 or 2? For the first lady, 5. Why 5? Why not 3? Why not? So numbers are arbitrary. Okay, maybe they can try and justify them and say, well, she needs a butler, she needs a groom's lady, she needs a food taster who will make sure that her food is kosher. So maybe they can justify the roles. But what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, the numbers are arbitrary. They were picked randomly. And so more can be done. More can be done.
We'll look at that more that can be done, because I would like you to tell us, when we come back from this next break, what other areas would you like to see government cut cost for them to really prove to Nigerians that they mean business and they're not just trying to give an impression and do the optics for people to think that something is happening. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. Still discussing the recently announced policy by the federal government of Nigeria reducing the size of entourage for federal government delegations for local and foreign trips. Our guest tonight is, of course, Dayo Akintobi. He's a public affairs journalist, analyst rather, joining us right here from Lagos, Nigeria via video link. We had earlier with us Larry Suraj, Chairman of Human and Environmental Development Agenda from Amsterdam in the Netherlands. We hope to have him back if possible. Dayo, let's look at other areas. Because you said that the government just stood up and just picked some numbers and threw them at Nigerians. You know, Nigerians said, okay, 60% of what? And we hear, okay, 25 local trip, 20 foreign trip. For me, I wonder if it's even possible to put a definite figure, like to wake up and say, we're not going for foreign trips more than 20 people. Because what if the occasion calls for 21 or 22? Genuinely calls for 21 or 22. Is the government going to say, oh, because we told Nigerians we're not going with more than 20, we're not going to be more than 20? You know, so I don't really understand. Shouldn't we have a more pragmatic approach to see, okay, we really want to be a cost-cutting government? What other areas do you think the government can look at to cut costs to really prove to Nigerians, not the cosmetic one that is meant to just give people something to talk about and distract them, to really, what would you see? What do you want to see from the government, this government, to really prove to Nigerians and to convince you and convince Nigerians that they actually have decided, you know what, we made a mistake. Where we came from May 29 last year, we've been doing the wrong thing. Let's start saving money. What do they need to look at? Where can they cut the cost from?
First and foremost, I think the allowances, not the salaries now, the allowances and the benefits of the legislature and the executive need to be reviewed. I think there should be some voluntary self-sacrifice to where, as opposed to saying, okay, cut our salaries in half, their salaries are an infinitesimal proportion of their package. I think that they should get the RMAFC to review their packages downwards to where clothing allowance, car allowance, housing allowance, all these funny allowances should be reduced. But more than that, I think the bigger issue is the size of government itself. I think it's too unwieldy. I think it's too expensive. When you have 36 states that the Constitution says we must have at least one minister from each, so you are tied to a minimum of 36 ministries. But that's not necessarily true. You can have 18 and have a minister of state and a substantive minister for each one. I look at some of the ministries and I think they they overlap each other and they duplicate functions. And I think they can be consolidated. I think many of the MDAs can be eliminated and reduced. I mean, under the Ministry of Aviation alone, I heard Minister Kayamo the other day say he has about 200 parastatals under that ministry alone. So you can imagine the costs that it will take to run the Ministry of Aviation when there's running costs for 200 plus sub-agencies. So the primary thing for me, first of all, is reduce the size of government, reduce the number of staff, reduce the number of people, pay people off. Yeah, we'll take a big hit to give people payoff packages, pay people off and let them go and work in the larger world. Personnel is the largest drain, salaries, running costs. So cut cost of governance, the best way to do it is to reduce the size of government. How do you do that? You reduce the number of personnel, you reduce the number of individual entities, whether ministries, whether departments, whether agencies, whether parastatals, you reduce those. Then you cut allowances. So the president has started in the right direction with this move. I'm not saying he didn't do well. I think he's in the right direction. I'm just saying he didn't do enough. It didn't go nearly far enough in terms of making a significant dent in the drain on government resources. I think what we will benefit from this move is infinitesimal. So the bottom line is to encourage him to go further. Okay, so now you've done travel. So next, look at allowances. From there, look at overlapping staff members. Look at overlapping agencies and ministries. So start cutting. So let's give him benefit of the doubt and assume that this is just a first step to show Nigerians that he's serious, that he's sensitive to our yearnings and our pain, and he really wants to make a difference. He wants to leave a legacy. Some of the steps he's taken recently are unprecedented in governance in Nigeria since 1999. I mean, I'm not talking about the subsidy or the floating of the naira and the elimination of the parallel market that he did when he first came in. I mean, his more recent administrative moves show that he's really actually trying to restructure governance in Nigeria as we have had it.
Okay,
so
Dayo, let's look at another aspect of this because of time. Yeah. Are there dangers, in the change as far as the president's security detail arrangement is concerned? Because what we're hearing is that they're not going to go with security detail from Abuja. They're going to use security detail in the states within where the president visits. But if we look at the makeup of the Nigeria police force, for instance, I don't know if we can say that there's certain equipment and certain category of personnel who are trained to do certain things that you can't find in the states. You only find them in Abuja. I do not know if we have adequate bomb disposal officials and vehicles, and those vehicles that have those trackers and all that, that need to be taken from Abuja to Lagos. Because if the governor is going to be hosting the president, he can't say, okay, my bomb squad, go and be with the president. What about him, his own personal security? So what are your thoughts on this? Is there a danger here in compromising the security and safety of Mr. President?
The president doesn't have a say in his own security at all. He obeys instructions based on what the DSS says. So in as much as he's saying that he won't bring security from Abuja, he's not talking about the DSS that protect him personally. Those officials in suits with an earpiece that you see running alongside his limousine, he's not leaving those anywhere he goes. The people that he will leave behind are all the vehicles in the back of the convoy that you see that are following his convoy, and the army personnel and the sharpshooters and the ambulance, and all of those support people. But in terms of the core security detail, the DSS, president has no say whatsoever in their operations, because their number one responsibility is to protect him, and he's not the one to tell him how to do it because he's not a security expert. So I put it to you that his immediate security detail is not among the 25 he has talked about, and it is not it is not excluded from going with him, in spite of the fact that he has said he will use local people, local security forces. Yes, local security forces.
I want to read what Ajuri Ngelale said. He said the president has directed local security agencies to be used for his protection wherever he travels, instead of traveling with a high number of security detail from Abuja. Okay, so let's just say Mr. President goes with his DSS detail. There's just those guys on suit. What about the rest? I remember when I first saw a Nigerian head of state, face to face. That was Babangida when he came to the city I lived in. And one of the things that we used to know Babangida was coming was a military plane flying to and fro from the city I lived in with the vehicles. If you remember, some years ago, so we had some generals who died in a helicopter mishap. Yeah, that was the time. And I saw about okay. Apart from the DSS, you have some soldiers. You talk about snipers. You talk about sharpshooters. You talked about the guards of brigade, the presidential guard, for instance. So who is Ajuri talking about here? Who are they going to leave back in Abuja? Because those cars you see on the convoy are actually from the local supporters, the political supporters, all those who like to sing his praises, aides of the governor if he comes to Lagos and all that. But for the security, who are they going to leave back in Abuja? I need to know if you can tell us, help us, who Ajuri Ngelale is talking about.
Well, remember that in Nigeria of today, security is centralized. It is federal, which means it is uniform across the 36 states and the FCT. So what a security operative has been trained to do and is located in Abuja is the same thing that a security operative that is located in Lagos has been trained to do. So I don't expect that there will be any difference in the standards of operation or protection levels from those who are with him in Abuja and those who are with him whenever he travels to any other part of the country. As long as they are members of the same Nigerian army, the same civil defense, the same Nigerian Air Force, they will deploy the same tactics and the same strategy as those left behind in Abuja. So that's why I said this is a bifurcated methodology whereby there are those who are his immediate personal security.
Yeah, but apart from that, Dio, who else does he travel with? Okay, those are who are his immediate. Who are you talking about? Are you talking about DSS? Are you talking about the guards of brigade, or was it presidential guard? Are you talking about who? Because there are people who are stationed with the president of Nigeria. And these people, yes. So who are they going to leave behind? We're not told. You talked about security. You said it's not in the president's hands. I wonder if it's in the hands of the president's spokesperson. And I wonder if, because Ajuri Ngelale gave a warning to those who want to flout it to their tribe. But if the national security advisor says we're moving with 50 or 100 people, can the president say no? So I don't understand. I tell you what, the first time in the early noughties, I attended an event with Obasanjo in attendance. I couldn't use my phone. I couldn't use any device because they had blocked the entire network, jammed it all over there. And there was a huge operation. Dio, I don't know if you've been where the American president has visited a city before. There's a huge operation. They come around, sweep. You know what they do. You know this better than I do because you're older than I. And so what is this government talking about? Who are they going to say stay back in? And we don't have those, even in Lagos. I don't think we have all those personnel who can prepare the ground for the president's visit, sweep everywhere, and do all the things they normally do. So what are we talking about here?
I guess you haven't seen a governor's advance party. Just recently, very recently, I had cause to be in a place where the deputy governor of a southwestern state visited an elder stateswoman from the state. And the advance party and the security that came to sweep the place were of close to the standard of those who would go on as an advance party to the American president. So I think it's
but that is a governor's security detail. As a president, yes, Dio, will you want to put your life in the hand of a state governor?
Does
that make security sense, Dio?
Listen, listen, Kofi, what I'm saying is, if they would deploy that extensive kind of architecture for a deputy governor of a state when she was outside her state, what makes you think that the president would not get any? What I'm saying is, the level of sophistication I saw of the security architecture for a deputy governor.
Dayo, I'm going to ask you again. I'm going to ask you again. As president, I will not place my security at the mercy of a state government or any other government. Even if I travel to the United States of America, I go to China, I go to Dubai, I will not place my personal security at the mercy of my host. Because I want to cut costs.
I didn't say put it in the hands of the deputy governor. Remember, I said that Nigerian law enforcement is central. So the police in Lagos or any other state that the president is visiting is no different from the police or the army in Abuja. Now, get this clear. The immediate people who will protect his life will follow him any and everywhere. But the support staff, the support security, the snipers, the sharpshooters, those who are immediately around him, I don't think he will leave the brigade of guards. I don't think he will leave his...
So if we're using the deputy governor's on security architecture or details, or the governor's security details, because not every state is the same, to protect the president, who will protect the governor and the deputy governor?
I didn't say they would use the governor's security detail. I just used that as an example of a template of the sophistication of the local troops. The local architecture have the wherewithal to do the job without the Abuja people following the president when he goes.
Because of time. And I was asking you earlier, do they have the equipment and the trained personnel in all the states? But do you have any issues? Because it sounded like you did with the attention given to the First Lady and the wife of the Vice President.
Well, I think it's an unnecessary drain on the resources. I think that whatever expenses the First Lady and the Second Lady incur should come out of their husbands' official budgets. I don't think we should have separate budgets for the First Lady because it's not a constitutionally recognized role. So I don't think she should have an office. I don't think she should have a budget. And if she ends up having official functions, I think they should be as the wife of the president, and therefore it should come from the president's own budget and not their own separately. I think that's an added drain on resources that Nigeria does not need.
All right, quite interesting. I mean, we look at the president's security detail, the inner circle, we have the Presidential Guards Brigade, we have the Department of State Services, we have the Police Mobile Force. Outer circle, we have the military, that's comprising Army, Navy, Air Force, at the beck and call of the president. They secure locations, control access points, they provide logistical support. We have the regular police, and specialized technical units that secure perimeters, manage traffic, and handle crowd control. Those ones are usually from the states. And we have intelligence agencies, the DSS, the NIA, other security agencies, intelligence agencies who gather intelligence and assess potential threats. Okay, I want to thank you so much for your time, Dayo Akintobi. I really enjoyed talking to you, and we'll like to have you again, a public affairs analyst. Thank you so much. Next time you come to the studio, thank you so much for your time.
Yes, indeed, absolutely, will do.
All right.
Cheers.
That's the size of our package. We'll watch the space, and we'll keep our eyes. Maybe we'll look for a way. I don't know which agency will be in charge of counting how many people follow the president out, but we'll have to look for a way to monitor. But like our guest has said, it's not enough. The government of Nigeria really needs to prove that it is interested in cutting the cost of governance by really actually cutting the cost of governance. They know what to do. My name is Kofi Bartels. That's the size of our package. See you tomorrow. Good night.